A few weeks ago, a Deadlock LAN was created on Eventbrite. It was called Deadlock Rising, and it promised a $2,000 prize pool, free snacks and drinks, a bar service, and a comedian on site. The LAN itself was supposed to be a best of 7 grand final. Everything else before that would be played in an online qualifier. The online qualifier was scheduled to be played 2 days before the actual event. You could sign your team up for the qualifier, or if you wanted to just attend the LAN as a spectator, you could purchase spectating tickets, which were $10 for the early bird, and as we got closer to the LAN, became $15 Canadian. Keep in mind, the numbers said in the video will be Canadian dollars as this was a Canadian event. Now, I'm wearing a button up because this is a very, very serious video, but this is also a very interesting story, and so I hope you guys enjoy. Originally, when I heard about this event, I instantly knew the person organizing it was unfamiliar with Deadlock. The format of the tournament was odd. I mean, first of all, who does a best of 7 in Deadlock, right? I don't think we've ever seen that. Who does a qualifier 2 days before the event, especially when it's a LAN? Just seemed off. The references to Deadlock were incorrect, and they didn't realize that this was the first Deadlock LAN. I believe there may have been some unofficial Deadlock LANs before, but really, like, there hasn't been a proper Deadlock LAN, right? So I didn't realize this could be the first proper one. So the first thing I did is I asked them, hey, how many teams do you need in order for this event to happen? Because my main fear was that I would sign up to the event and then not enough teams would sign up and it would lead to the event being canceled. So confidently, Prince, who we'll learn a lot more about throughout the video, said, hey, as long as we have 2 teams, I will not cancel. I'll put a screenshot on the screen, but he literally said this word for word almost. This was the beginning of a story that got wilder than I possibly could have imagined. I will attempt to present the facts as unbiased as possible, but do keep in mind that I have a bias as I'm only able to share my perspective and the perspective of others that I know. I'm not able to be fully unbiased, but I will try to present the facts without being too opinionated about them and let you guys form an opinion about what went down. Enjoy. This video is meant for entertainment and educational purposes only. Please do not harass or contact anyone in this video. I'm not doing this, to start some sort of witch hunt or anything. I'm merely doing this to educate the community and spread awareness about these situations. After I learned of the event, I informed Ref, one of my co-founders at Deadlock Events. Some of you guys may know him or may have interacted with him if you've been part of anything Deadlock. He's a fantastic guy. He's got a great radar for people because he told me right away, this guy is suspicious. And so he told me, be careful. When you look at his past socials posts, the guy known as Prince, which we'll talk about a little bit more later, and his brand, The Reveling Rabbit, had canceled the prior 2 events, which were small events. So he hadn't really had a successful event before, and having your first event be a LAN definitely seems suspicious, so there were certainly some red flags already. Ref did warn me he seemed like a serial canceller and was a little bit afraid that I'd go there and it'd be canceled, and so I made the smart decision of booking everything refundable, just in case. Regardless of that, after Prince told me specifically on Discord that he would not cancel so long as there were 2 teams, I unfortunately trusted him on that. So who is Prince anyway? He goes by the name Prince or Misfit Online. His online brand has been fairly recent, only a couple months ago, and it's called The Reveling Rabbit. And his real name is Nived. Now, I found his LinkedIn. I'm not going to share his LinkedIn necessarily. I really don't want it to come to that. But just know that, I don't want to just say his username because I think it's important for this guy to be identifiable because you can change a username so easily, but you can't change your first name that easily. His online username, Prince, would become far more fitting than I could have ever imagined with his behavior. Shortly after I told him I would most likely attend, he started to ask me questions or telling me things about the event. The first thing that was a red flag to me was the unnecessary use of ChatGPT for a bunch of random things. The best example that I have to show you guys is using ChatGPT to create prompts that have Deadlock references in order to introduce the comedian that's going to be at the LAN. Yes, there's a comedian that is supposed to be at the LAN, okay? And so he's like, I want to introduce this guy with Deadlock references. And then he sends me 4 prompts, right, of ChatGPT, and he asks me, which one would I choose? And I didn't know how to, I was trying to understand what he was even asking of me because at first I was so confused. But I realized that these prompts made no sense because they were all AI hallucinations. Like, they weren't even things that were in Deadlock. Like, it was talking about Jet, and it was talking about Vindicta's null zone and things that I'd never seen before. And so I was so confused, and I told him, hey, you should probably just introduce the comedian normally, you know? You don't need to be like extra about it. Just like Deadlock players are human beings, you know? If you are gonna have a comedian there, just say, hey, here's the comedian. He's there for the vibes. You know, here's the types of works he's done before, or like, you know, do a little intro reel or something like that, and people are gonna be totally happy with that. Unfortunately, he did not want to hear it, and he seemed very, very adamant about kind of doing things his way. And you'll see, doing things his way comes up pretty often. The second red flag was after I did my first promotional stream for him. So I was doing the promotional stream mostly from the goodness of my heart, and also because I wanted the event to happen, because Toronto's not that far from me, right? And so I wanted to be able to go. Unfortunately, you know, as I did the stream, or after I did the stream, I did ask for 2 spectator tickets to get a little compensation for my wife and her friend who wanted to come, which I think is fair. They were valued at $20 at that time, which is not much for doing a sponsored stream that's going to get the eyes of, you know, pretty much the whole Deadlock community on him. After the stream, it got, I think, way more exposure than he realized. Like, I don't know if he exactly knew who I was. I think he had an idea, but I don't think he knew that it would get like this much exposure, basically. And so he wasn't expecting it. So he started freaking out a little bit, but not necessarily in a bad way, but just in a little bit of a weird way. Tickets were selling pretty fast, and he was getting very excited, which, you know, that's normal. But then he started talking about flying teams out and getting a $10,000 sponsor and all of these things. Now, keep in mind, at this point, we're like literally like 10 days before the event. To me, 10 days before a LAN is already pretty short notice, right? Like that's very short notice, I would say. And so the fact that he's, you know, talking about doing all these things now, I'm like, okay, so you're just gonna randomly change the game and basically just say, hey, you got a 10K sponsor, you're gonna fly all these teams. And like, he was telling me he was gonna have the meeting with the sponsor in 5 days, which would be like almost 5 days before the event. And I was just like, this is insane. You know, you can't change things last minute like this in a LAN event. It's not online, you know, it's in person. Like, people have to make plans around it and stuff, right? His plan was, if he gets the sponsor, he's gonna buy plane tickets for the teams that qualify through the only online qualifier. Only 2 teams were gonna make it. So the LAN was supposed to only be the finals, right? So it was gonna be a best of 7 from the 2 teams that qualified. And his plan, the qualifier was August 1st. So his plan was, after the qualifier, he would buy the plane tickets for the teams, either August 1st, like around midnight after the qualifiers, right? Or like August 2nd. So he would buy next day plane tickets for the entire team. And I mean, I looked quickly, like usually next day tickets are about $1,000 from most American cities to Toronto. So that would be like just a 10K investment just by itself. So I don't think he had any idea, but I was just like, well, you know, if you do this, you're gonna kill my team, because my team was a mismatch of a couple different teams. You know, I had AVG, I had Poshy, which was on melee creeps at the time. AVG was on hydronation. So I'm like, if you fly out these teams, you know, my team's dead. And obviously that would kind of suck, because I'm the one that kind of promoted your event in the first place. And so it just felt weird. And that was the whole situation was like a red flag to me, wanting to change things last minute. He was also confused when I told him that the only teams that would reasonably sign up for the qualifier, as the format was, were teams that could make it to the LAN fairly easily, right? Because the qualifier is 2 days before the LAN. So there's only 2 types of teams that are gonna sign up to the qualifier. One is if they know for sure that they can guaranteed just win the qualifier and not worried about it, which was kind of the case for our team, the No Name Avengers. And 2 is like the teams that are just local, right? Like, if everyone is nearby or in Toronto, then it's not a problem, because even if you don't qualify, you don't really have to make plans, you know? So it's not a problem for people that are in Toronto, that are local to the area. He told me that he didn't understand, because he thought that teams would want to sign up to the qualifier anyway, just to practice the format. He was like, don't teams just want to practice the format? And I was like, well, if teams wanted to practice, they would just scrim. And he was like, yeah, but like scrims are never like the real thing. You know, I thought they would want to practice like the actual format and everything. And I was like, well, respectfully, like, if teams take the practice more seriously, it can be even more helpful than playing tournaments, because you can practice specific things, you practice what you want. So tournaments are important for sure, but if it's an online qualifier and there's no prize pool and nothing to gain, and they're not going to show up to the LAN, why would they ever play in it, right? And he seemed a little confused by that. So that was definitely a big red flag. The last flag, and I mean, there was a bunch of red flags, but the last one that I'm going to talk about is the organization. So he was kind of like, the whole Discord was a mess. So he had a Discord server, there was almost no one, it was poorly advertised, the event was on Eventbrite. That part is not that bad, but regardless. And then what he would do is, like, when he needed to work with people, he would create Discord group chats. So he wouldn't do like a channel, For example, for Death Slam events, right, we have a staff Discord, right? And in that staff Discord, we have a bunch of channels. You will have a channel for production, a channel for admins, a channel for whatever, right? And that's where people will coordinate, because that's how most organizations work. You know, you need central areas. Like even if you're in an office, you're gonna do Teams channels, right? If people use Teams, you're gonna have channels. If you use Slack, you're gonna have channels. Like, it works like this in literally every business. And he keeps saying he's an engineer, so I don't know how he doesn't understand this. But anyway, he only worked with group chats, and he didn't even know Discord had a limit of 10 people. So he would like remove and add people from group chats randomly. He would just be like, oh, you're added, you're removed, you're added, you're depending on who we needed at the time. So that part was completely insane. He also called the group chats like ridiculous things. Like, for example, he called the group chat for the venue, he called it V for venues, which he later changed to something inappropriate, which I will not say, after he had his meltdown, which is the next thing that I'm going to talk about. And he also had the streaming demons, which was supposed to be like basically the production team, the streaming demons. Like, are we for real? You know? So, I mean, I'm all about having a good fun, but it just seemed pretty cringe. So, let's get to kind of the meat of the discussion, which is the whole meltdown, right? So, for those of you, you know, most of you probably already know that the LAN was canceled, right? But how did we get to the LAN being canceled? As the event was getting closer, it was becoming more and more clear how unprepared this guy really was, right? And we're going to explore this first through Kashi's perspective, which is a Death Slam events producer, who was also asked to produce the qualifier, the online qualifier for this tournament, right? We're going to explore through that first. Now, as a standard, in order to be able to like set up production, right, Kashi would need a bunch of visuals, right? Like, he would need like a visual for the draft, a visual for the, you know, transitions, a visual for, you know, a break, you know, things like that, right? Things that every broadcast kind of has. If you've watched, you know, Deadlock Fight Night in the past, which has rebranded, if you've watched the Death Slam events, you know that. If you watch Deadlock Core, if you've watched the 1-win tournament, you know all these tournaments have this. So it's very normal. Creating these visuals is not the production person's job, right? You need like a graphic designer to do that. The person at production, their role is to make sure that all the inputs and the transitions and everything is being coordinated, and that, you know, the players are ready, the casters are ready, transferring kind of the views and, you know, getting the live replays, kind of doing all of that. That's the producer's job in my mind, right? I'm not a producer, but that's how I see it. But in Prince's mind, it's not exactly what it was. A little bit of context as well is that Alex, another guy, was meant to produce at the venue on Sunday. But Prince only decided Tuesday that the online qualifier would be streamed. So the online qualifier was on Friday. So 3 days before the online qualifier, Prince decided he wanted it streamed. Now, for anyone that's been in broadcast in the past, you know that a 3-day notice is basically like just completely ridiculous. Like, how are you going to set up a full package in 3 days? It's just not possible. Regardless, Kashi played ball and had a call with him on Tuesday and explained to him what would be needed in order to produce a broadcast, on the off chance that, hey, maybe this guy can produce a broadcast somehow, but knowing that it was quite unlikely to get set up in time. In the first screenshot, Kashi asks Prince for an update on the graphics. This occurs Thursday evening, so 2.5 days after they had their call, and basically a day before the online qualifier. Prince then adds another person to the group chat, his admin, and then he acts confused about what Kashi needs. He then changes the group chat title twice, and then he asks Alyssa, which is his graphic designer that he hired, who knows where. We know English is not her first language, I think, in some screenshots. Obviously, she's like a freelancer that he hired online for cheap, presumably. Not saying she's not good, but that, just giving context to that. And then he's like, hey, you need to do this. And he's like, you're not going to get paid if you don't deliver the graphics within 30 minutes. As far as I'm aware, he only asked her to get started Tuesday. So she only had a few days to do this. And I didn't see any screenshots where he actually tells her like a deadline, you know? And so I don't think he communicated this very well to her. But anyway, he gets angry. And, you know, then Alyssa kind of delivers, right? And she kind of sends him what she has. And then he types in the group chat, this is what we call a fire. All hands on deck. Afterwards, Prince sends screenshots of his discussion with his graphic designer, while the graphic designer is still in the group chat, by the way. And from these messages, we can assume the conversation started probably around July 28th or 29th. Impossible to say for sure. And he basically, this means that he expected the graphic designer to be able to do a full package in just a couple days for $60. So obviously, like, price sometimes is not an issue. For example, at Deathslam events, like, everyone is a volunteer, you know, and we do everything volunteer. Like, all of our graphics were done for free, you know. So, but it's just about how you treat people. And, you know, we gave ample time to our graphics team to get those teams ready. To get those things ready. Also, we know the community, so it's not necessarily about the price, but the fact that he expected it to be done on such short notice by someone he'd never worked with before, a random freelancer, for $60. And I don't even think he informed her correctly of what needed to be done, because in the screenshots she looks pretty confused about what needs to be done herself, because and the main thing that he asks her is about an animated background. And the animated background, the inspo that he gives is rainy, starry Goku. You can't make this up. You can't make this up. Anyway, he realizes she doesn't have that, I guess, and then he asks Alex to take over, despite Alex having mentioned he's not free to take over just previously. And then he starts adding random people to the group, because I think he's getting desperate for literally anyone to be able to fix it. Now, Kashi doesn't feel like he's getting through to Prince, so he asks Prince to acknowledge the fact that, hey, I'm not able to produce this broadcast, you know, because Kashi, at this point, Kashi wants out, you know, because he's like, you don't have a visual package, therefore I cannot produce it. I can't do my job. You know, you can't ask someone to shovel dirt and not give them a shovel, right? So Kashi doesn't have the tools required to do his job, so he can't do his job. And Kashi is one of the most professional people I've ever worked with. Like, he's absolutely amazing in what we do at Deathslam events. Very, very crucial member of the team. And I know for a fact that Kashi was not the problem here. I can guarantee that. Prince ignores him. And he offers to support. He says, I know GIMP, I can help. Like, I don't think he understands the complexity of what's happening. And then he asks Sashi if they can just start with a basic blue background. Kashi refuses because he's like, we can't, I want to maintain a certain standard of production. Kashi works, you know, volunteer, like he would be volunteer for this event. And, you know, if he wants to work volunteer, the biggest thing that's in it for him is getting his name out there and showing the quality of work that he can do to future employers, right? You know, of course Kashi wants to make money at some point, right? It makes sense, everybody does. And so why would you do an event that's like subpar with bad quality for free? You know, it makes no sense. And then and then Prince offers to call his MC, which we can only understand as the comedian, to help because he's done these things many times. But I'm like, I really do not think he has. So Kashi repeats he's not going to be part of this broadcast. Prince gets angry and he says, leave already, you know, be professional. And he's basically telling Kashi that he is the production manager and director, so that he needs to do his job. He's like, Kashi, you just need to tell your crew what to do. This, in my opinion, this is where it shows a complete lack of self-awareness, because I feel like he is basically treating Kashi as if Kashi has like the same level of responsibility as he does, which is completely insane, because he's the one hosting the event and he's the one that's basically like, you know, he's the one that's gonna reap the benefits from it, right? Kashi's not gonna reap anything, so he's the one that should be putting in the most work, realistically. But anyway, you know, that's not how he feels. I guess he just doesn't feel that way. And a clarification that was given from Kashi was that Kashi told me he was only brought on just to produce one stream and nothing else, the qualifier stream. And he said at no point was there any discussion about a production manager and director role or anything of the likes. So he was throwing titles as a persuasion tool. And I 100% believe Kashi, this guy's throwing around whatever he thinks will get people to kind of work for him. You know, he'll tell them whatever he feels that they need to hear. At this point, Alex joins in, and he agrees he can't be a part of this anymore either, and that Kashi's basically like, he can't blame Kashi, right? Prince asks them, were you guys not doing anything this whole time? Prince, you have, so far from the screenshots we've seen, Prince wasn't doing anything this time either. He decided Tuesday, 3 days before the qualifier, that he wanted it streamed. He could have decided that 3 weeks ago when he first planned the event. That would not have been hard to come up with that, and then everything would have been fine. But he did everything last minute. Well, I don't think he did anything. He acted on everything last minute, and his way to act was not to do anything, but to ask other people, hey, is anything done, and be very unclear about it, and clearly have no idea how anything works. Kashi gives a quick little recap. Hey, you know, this is what happened. We had a call. I told you what to get. You didn't get what I told you, right? None of the required graphics are done, so we can't help you. This is a particularly long screenshot. I'll probably have it vertically moving along the screen. Basically, the main thing to take away from this one, you don't have to read everything, is Prince wants to use Chaz's graphics from Deadlock Core, another tournament, okay? Now, Prince is basically wants to steal their graphics without even permission. He's like, hey, what if we just change the colors or something, right? He does ask Chaz, but he does tell Kashi he would love to just like use the graphics and just change the colors, and it's not a big deal, and everybody will help each other in Deadlock. You know, we're all here to help each other, blah, 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 right? And, you know, it's basically not possible. Kashi tells him that, you know, it's too late, there's nothing you can do, blah, blah, blah. And then Prince says, time constraints are solved by more resources. Another beautiful quote from Prince, who, you know, is basically like, we've got an army. And then Prince puts a screenshot of like a Google sheet that has like a bunch of roles listed, right? And basically, as far as I've been aware, these roles weren't even like what people like said they would do. These roles are just people that he listed in like different positions, like by himself. As far as I'm aware, most of these people did not agree to be in those positions necessarily, you know. And he had like 2 like tournament like organizers or something listed in there. I'm like, there's like 2 teams in your event. Do you really need multiple tournament organizers? Like, it's kind of insane. And then we're getting to the scheduled stream time. And then Prince asks, does this work? And sends Kashi literally just a blue background with a black starting soon text. Like, just a blue background. It has a starting soon text. Now, you know, even for my first Death Slam when I had 0 production, I did at least like a video, you know. But it was still pretty scuffed, but still, he's like, does this work? And Kashi, obviously, like, Kashi doesn't respond, and then Prince is like, just run the show, you know? And then he has a legendary quote. This guy has a lot of legendary quotes. Time is money, money is paper, paper is trees, trees are organic, organic equals friendship equals love equals romantic. And then he just says, you got this, I'm gonna go smoke. Makes sense, you know, he's probably tired from all the work he did adding the starting soon text to the blue background. I mean, I'm sure that, you know, it was a very, very large amount of work in paint to do that, so he deserves the smoke. Now we're gonna move on to Soren's perspective. We're gonna try to be a little bit quick, but after Kashi and Alex refuse to help the show, he turns to Soren. Now, Soren is a caster for the Death Slam events, and you know, he wants to like basically explore opportunities in Deadlock. He loves the game. He's been amazing to work with, so a huge shout out to Soren in general, and he was there at the event. But yeah, basically Prince turns to Soren and he's like, you gotta save me, basically. And so he asks him, you know, who can run pro? Like, Soren's like, who can run prod? I don't know. As the start time approaches, Soren tries to call Prince to ask him what the plan says, but Prince ghosts him. Now you have to understand, this is like almost 5 p.m. Friday. The qualifier is supposed to start at 5 p.m. Friday, and Prince is ghosting Soren, who is the last person like really helping Prince at this point, right? And so I'm talking to Prince. Prince is not responding to me either. I'm asking, hey, what are we doing? Because I'm waiting with my team. And then I talk to Soren. Soren tells me, hey, we're going to delay things 30 minutes. I'm like, okay. But I'm a little bit confused and a little bit concerned at that point. Now, after some time, I believe Prince ghosted Soren for like over 30 minutes. Like, I think 30 something minutes, 36-ish. Eventually he does reply, but by the time he's replied, Soren has already like decided, hey, like the show must go on, right? I would have done the same thing in Soren's position. It's like, hey, you're not replying, I'm just going to start these teams off on the qualifier without a stream, right? So they just start without a stream, and it's a little bit scuffed, but hey, as long as we get to play the games, it's not that big a deal, right? Because then we can just decide who qualifies for the LAN, and the LAN is really what matters, right? Nobody cares really about these online qualifiers too much. Prince said that he was off doing his job that pays him real money, kind of belittling the whole role that he has in this thing, you know, saying that his job is more important, etc., etc. Well, you know, if that's true, just don't host the event. It's not that hard. And then he also says that he's changing his title to Chief In-Person Event Operator, essentially insinuating that he doesn't want to be involved with the online portion of it anymore. He only wants to be involved with the in-person portion. So once again, just, you know, giving responsibilities to other people. In these next screenshots, Prince asks Soren if he can stream anything on his Twitch channel, The Reveling Rabbit. Soren asks for the Twitch info, which was left out of the screenshot. Prince then says he likes the people part, not the online part, kind of to corroborate what I just said, because he's not young and he doesn't have energy. Soren then asks for a Discord channel so that he can record the results from the matches for the qualifier, and Prince says yes. But then it takes him 20 minutes and it's still not made, right? We know from the message from Soren that 20 minutes later, the channel was still not made. It's just one Discord channel. Like, it takes 5 seconds. I could make a Discord channel right now while making this video. Multitasking, it would take 5 seconds. Then he also changes the subject and introduces the next talking point. The person who we're gonna call L as she chooses to remain anonymous to the public, which is totally fair. To bring some context to this L person, L is a legitimately competent tournament organizer that has ran real events in the past, right? And who Soren has met, not Soren, I believe, who Prince has met, I believe, at a networking event in person. In fact, she likes Deadlock, and I actually did meet her at the event, and so she was, really lovely to talk to, and seemed, she seemed like a great person overall. So I have nothing but positive things to say about L, which makes me, even kind of more disgusted by the whole thing that happens with L. Anyhow, Prince basically presents L as the solution to all the problems, right? Suggesting that she should take over the event, the entire thing. And he also said he's worked 150 hours this week, which, by the way, there's 168 hours in a week, I believe. So if he's worked 150 of those, that would leave 18 hours for sleep and eating. Now, 18 hours for sleep, that's literally like a little over 2 hours a day of sleep, and that's not even counting the time that he's eating or doing anything else. So obviously mathematically impossible, but it's funny because he mentions a 150-hour work week many times. And he also says he's depressed, there's no production, no cast, etc. And then Soren reminds him to just focus on Sunday because that's all there's left, which is a great call from Soren. Just focus on the LAN. That's all everybody's gonna care for. And Prince makes it very clear he's completely lost about what was needed for production to work, despite Kashi's clear instructions, right? So it kind of looks like even despite Kashi being extremely clear, he still had no idea. Now, he finally breaks down and wants to cancel the event. He says just end stream, not stream, just scrim. He's incapable of spelling, but he says just end stream, even though Soren has said multiple times he's not even streaming. So he's just like, end something that's not even there. He talks about how embarrassing it is, and then Soren says it's going to be much worse if he fully cancels, and Prince says he knows, but I don't think he realized just how much worse it would get for him. The last screenshot is after the event is canceled. Prince pitches an idea to save the watch party venue part of the event. Yes, he had a separate watch party venue. How clueless. Okay, first of all, the watch party venue thing in the first place is like, what the hell? Why would people want to be at a different venue to watch? The whole point of a LAN is you want to be together, right? And then the second thing is, how clueless do you have to be to pitch an idea to an event that you canceled, right? This is basically after he knows that I took over, and he's still pitching ideas, and it's just like, you canceled the event, you lost all privilege. You lost all privilege about any suggestion of any kind. We then have the conversation with L. So L allowed me to kind of share the essence of their conversation without sharing screenshots or anything, which is fair. So you'll have to kind of take my word for this part. But essentially the whole conversation between Prince and L was Prince begging, literally begging L to take over the event and being like, please take over the event. And I mean, the way that he was talking to her is just like insane, in my opinion, like completely unacceptable. And he also says like he failed, like he admits that he failed with the event, right? But he doesn't really take responsibility because he says that it's kind of his team lead's faults. Like he basically blames his team lead's faults, which in his mind is like Kashi and like other people like that, for not having done their job and properly managing their teams. He basically sees himself as like, the CEO of a company, except the worst type of CEO that does literally nothing other than like just sit by and hope everybody does everything and reap all the rewards at the end. That's literally like what he wants, He wants to sell merch, he wants to make money. He doesn't want to actually do any of the dirty work that is an esport events. I don't think he realizes esport events are not profitable, they're just not. So I don't know why he's even in the sphere. L tries to confront him and basically tells him your priorities are all over the place. You know nothing about esports, and she basically speaks a bunch of facts. And then he doesn't want to listen. He basically talks nonsense for a good part of the conversation, talking about random things like getting food. And he also admits that he hadn't even paid for the venue yet, because she's asking questions of like, okay, have you paid for this? She's like, maybe I can help, but I need to know certain things. And he's basically not giving her a straight answer about anything. And finally, he admits the venue's not even paid for. And this is literally like 2 days before the event. The venue is not paid for. And then he says his next event is going to be sick. We'll see about that. Now, let's get to my side. And I'm going to try to, wrap it up so not to take too much time. This is already a fairly long video. So my side, at 8:04 p.m. Eastern on Friday, so after I had finished the qualifiers for the online LAN and my team No Name Avengers qualified, he messages me saying, "Sorry, Deathy, I killed this event. I couldn't bear to watch the monstrosity today," so on and so forth, and he just ends his message with peace. I received this message. I'm literally in the middle of a Deadlock game. I'm queuing with Lona. For those of you that were watching the stream, you probably remember I was like standing still and alt-tabbing all the time because I was like, what am I reading? And then I asked, what do you mean by canceled? Or sorry, what do you mean by killed? And so he just repeats, I killed it. And at that point, I'm furious. I'm gonna be honest, at that point, I'm trying not to show it, but I'm completely furious because my wife and I, we have booked accommodations. I know people that are flying over. My entire team is prepared, and it's literally like 38 hours before the event or some absurd amount of time. And so I'm like, you can't cancel it. I tell him basically, you can't. Like, you cannot. And he says, I say, I'll give you whatever you need. I'll give you whatever you need to make it happen. You cannot withdraw the prize pool. And he says, why not? And then he just sends me a poster of the event being canceled. And I'm like, I'm so flabbergasted at this point. I don't even know what to say. And then he talks about how it's not about money, how it's about something more complicated. But every time I ask him what that something more complicated is, he basically gives me like no answer. Like nobody knows. Obviously, from the other screenshots and the other perspectives, we know what it's about, right? I didn't know because I didn't have the other people's side at this time. But we know that it's literally just about running the event, right? We know that that is what is too complicated for him, is doing anything at all related to running the event. Like planning anything, getting anything going for production, getting anything going for the teams. He basically, as far as I'm aware, the only thing that he did is have ideas and maybe message some people on Instagram and talk to vendors. He prioritized everything that mattered the least in an esports event. He didn't prioritize his crew, he didn't prioritize the players, and he didn't prioritize the spectators. He prioritized talking to vendors and business relationships, which is not how you run an esports event. Then he suggests I should buy the Rabbit, his brand. I ignore his request, and I tell him, once again, if he just fronts the price pool, I'll handle everything else. At this point, I'm desperate to save the event. I'll do whatever, you know? And then, you know, he says, yeah, then he says, bet 3,000, yours, community donation, but fix all my emails. I respond, that's fine. At that point, I'm honestly even willing to talk to his vendors and everything. I respond, that is fine. I just need a call so you can tell me exactly what is left in the air, what your obligations are, etc., and I will see if I can handle it. Obviously, I don't want to agree to something without knowing exactly everything, like who does he owe money to, who did he say that he was going to pay, etc., etc. So I ask him, are you free in 20 minutes? And then he responds, he is not free, and that he wants to be left alone. And I'm like, okay, well, that's very difficult to do if you want me to deal with your things, you know? So I still try to get the prize pool. I'm like, okay, you know, I'm like, if you're not free or whatever and you don't want to go over these things, that's fine. I'm just going to need proof that you're going to give me the 3K, you know, in order to kind of do this. Because obviously at this point, nobody trusts you anymore. And then he just like triple questions mark me. And then like he's like, give me some breathing room. Give me some breathing room. And I'm like, you're the one that said 3K. I didn't say anything about 3K. You're the one that said, bet I'll give you 3K community donation, just fix my emails. And now that I'm asking you to actually do it, you're asking me to give you breathing room. I mean, this is insane, right? At this point, I call him hostile and untrustworthy, and I move on. I'm going to keep this screenshot here for mostly the memes, because the 2B's one whole quote seems to be a beloved meme at this point. So I'm going to keep it in there, and it is kind of funny. And in the last screenshot, I tell him that he should close the Eventbrite, and he's like, I gotta refund everyone to do that. And in my head, I'm like, duh, like, of course you have to refund everyone. Like, you're canceling the event. Of course you have to refund everyone. And, you know, that's his responsibility. And I end by telling him that if he does not cover the prize pool, his reputation will be cooked. Hence this video. He did not cover the prize pool. Now, I do want to say he did cover one thing, right? So I actually thought he wasn't going to give any money to anyone at all. But to be fair, to his credit, he did cover Soren's expenses. I believe that the total is something like $600 Canadian or something, but it's not a negligible amount. Like, it's a decent chunk of money that he covered for Soren. And of course, you know, that's a very nice gesture. Now, it does not pay for all the damages that he caused, because the damages that he caused are in the thousands of dollars. You know, and we could go over that, but like, think about everyone that bought plane tickets, everyone that had hotels, all of that stuff. If I didn't step in to help, and if the community hadn't donated to kind of like save the event, a lot of people would just be screwed. At the end of the day, I don't wish harm to anyone involved. It's just really important to me to share how this thing went down. And basically, I want to make sure, Prince, if you're watching this or if you watch this, that you just don't host any more events. Like, respectfully, Prince is not someone that is capable of hosting an event. Like, just, this person should not be trusted with hosting an event at all, ever again. Like, and to me, it's incredibly important that other people don't fall for the same things that we fell for, right? And that's really the main focus of this video for me. Because it could have been really bad. It ended up kind of working out, but basically through no fault of him. I do want to say that it's not all negative. The LAN itself ended up being an incredible event after we took over, basically, and fixed everything. And I will make a second video about how exactly we saved the LAN, right? What went into it? How did the community donations go? What were kind of the logistical difficulties from our side? You know, what were the successes? What were the lessons learned, etc.? So look forward to that video. Not sure exactly when that's going to release. Probably going to release it sometime this week. But yeah, definitely look forward to that and let me know what else you'd like to see. I just want to thank you guys so much for watching. I think it's a really, really important topic to discuss. And once again, thank you guys for the support and spread the word. Spread the word. All right. Have a good one, everyone.